Four college students from Transylvania University pulled off a heist that shook the nation. They stole rare books valued at over $12 million from their university library. These weren't seasoned criminals. They were just normal students, well-liked, and from good backgrounds. But in a twist nobody saw coming, they dove into a life of high-stakes crime, breaking the law and getting the FBI on their trail. So how did they manage to pull off this insane heist? And what pushed them to take such a huge risk? This isn't just any theft story. It's a wild ride about ordinary students making an extraordinary choice. So make sure to watch it until the end. Meet the boys. Spencer Reinhard attended Transylvania University on an art scholarship. Warren Lipka, a University of Kentucky student on a sports scholarship, and they had been best friends since they were 8 years old. They were both from South Lexington. Spencer had been touring the campus, including the special collection and library, as part of his freshman orientation. Together with Eric Borsuk, a fellow University of Kentucky student, Lipka had started to sell phony identification documents to students. Chas Allen, a friend of Eric, whom all three met during the summer break, joined them later as their getaway driver and hauler. Transylvania University's Special Collections Department, housed in the library, has rare books, pamphlets, images, and manuscripts. Students and academics can explore Kentucky's history thanks to these exceptional collections of original source documents. The department can be found at the library's top level. Book collectors help the library, most notably wealthy New York sportswoman Clara Peck. The rare books collections are worth hundreds of millions of dollars and all hold invaluable cultural heritage. Original paintings by Audubon, Troy, and Peale, as well as the Horain collection of pre-1800 medical literature and the Marcia Owen collection of children's books, are all kept in the same room, all valued at nothing less than $100 million. Established in 1960, the Rare Book Room features furnishings donated by Mr. and Mrs. Bennett Ferris of Richmond, Kentucky, thus adding beauty to the room itself. The librarian in charge of the rare books collection at the time of the heist was Betty Jean Gooch, who began her employment at the institution in 1994. On December 16, 2004, while meeting with a colleague outside her office, Betty Jean Gooch, the special collections librarian at Transylvania University, noticed two young men coming up the stairs to the rare books room. The men were dressed as old men with facial hair and wrinkles. The two men in costumes turned around and walked away as soon as they saw the women. The two women paid no attention to what had just happened, not knowing what was to come, an event that violently shook BJ to the extent that she found herself unable to discuss it for many years. In addition to being bound and in danger, the trauma stemmed from two additional precious things that were violated: the workplace that she considered her home, and the unique bond she shared with kids, while educating them about so many of Transylvania's treasures. Spencer had gone on a freshman orientation tour of Transylvania, which included a visit to the library and its remarkable collection of rare books and manuscripts, many weeks before Warren approached him about the fake ID company. Spencer recalls that they were taken to the special collections room and showed these books, among them his Transylvania's highly valued Birds of America, a 4-volume set of life-size engravings by the eminent wildlife artist that Audubon finished in London in 1838. Less than 200 sets of the set were made. Spencer wasn't aware of the presence or existence of these books, although he might have heard their names before. The fact that some of the books sold for about $12 million a few years ago was something that startled him. He knew this wasn't something he couldn't go anyhow. While Spencer was smoking marijuana in the car with Warren, Spencer narrated his experience at the library and how much was made from the sale of a really important book. He inadvertently planted and watered a seed in Warren's mind that would grow to wreck their lives later on. Spencer found the time he needed to explore the special collections section of the Transylvania Library in between working out, studying for his first semester's finals, and painting. He reported to Warren a few weeks later that there was no security other than an elderly librarian named BJ, and that he had to sign a visitor's book. Spencer well expected there to be an impassable barrier somewhere down the line, but he felt he would stoke that exciting flicker of criminality for a little while longer by returning the ball to Warren's court. For example, how would they ever sell the books even if they did take them? Warren claims to know a guy in New York, someone important to solving this puzzle. Warren was able to set up a meeting in New York after making multiple phone calls. The contact, who went by Barry, insisted that Warren deliver $500 in cash that was given in good faith. Spencer's Acura Legend was used to travel the 700 miles to Manhattan after the two companions purchased a bag of marijuana late on a Thursday afternoon in mid-February. They paid in cash and used an alias to check into a Hilton hotel. Their pseudonym was supported by one of their fictitious driver's licenses from Kentucky. They took that action to avoid creating a paper trail in case something was looked into. On the southern border of Central Park, close to the Plaza Hotel, was where the meeting was to take place the following morning. Barry stated that he was going to be wearing a green scarf and that he was an elderly man with a ponytail. At first, Barry got upset by the boy's age, which caused the meeting to collapse. The boys had to put up a front because they weren't trained for this or had any experience whatsoever. Warren gave the man the $500 after an uncomfortable exchange of words. In exchange, as planned, Barry gave him an email address and told him to sign off on any correspondence with the name Terry. After arriving back in Lexington without incident, the two opened a Yahoo account and, following instructions, used the name Terry to send off an email claiming to have some valuable books in their possession. A week later, they received a rather curt reply explaining that he would need to travel to Amsterdam in person to sell anything. Spencer and Warren were ecstatic as well, until they found out they would need a passport. Spencer thought the issue was insurmountable. Once more, Warren disagreed. This time again, they met with their usual provider of fake IDs to obtain a fake passport. They paid $2,500 and received it within a week. Only Warren could travel in order to save money. He arrived at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam early on a Saturday in March 2004. He got into a taxi and headed to Dam Square, an ancient hippie hangout in the city center that he had read about online. He smoked a little weed before checking into a hole in the wall and dozing off. Nervous, he headed to the nearby cafe, where he was to have the meeting early the following morning. He was directed to find a heavy-set, bearded man wearing a solid blue jumper. Warren found that kind of man sitting with 3 other men when he arrived. Unfazed, Warren sat down and shook hands firmly before introducing himself as Terry. Similar to Barry, the men were turned off by Warren's youth right away, and were even more so by the fact that he hadn't taken any of the books to Amsterdam. Not only did he lack documentation, photocopies, and images, but he was also completely incapable of having a meaningful conversation about the books. Even though the encounter was brief, no more than 15 minutes, it was significant because the men gave Warren important information about how to sell rare books, whether they were stolen or not. An evaluation by a reputable auction company. The men assured Warren that if he could get the books appraised by a reputable company, they'd be glad to be in business with him. So he walked off. Happily, he came back to the States and blew Spencer's mind. After Warren's arrival, he and Spencer plotted their next move. After researching auction houses online, Warren singled out Christie's in New York City. He picked it because Christie's is the biggest auction house. If they went in there, he envisages that they're not going to suspect that the books were stolen, because no one would go to Christie's with stolen books to get them appraised. They also figured that the more they were seen around campus, the less likely they would be suspected of any wrongdoing or even bothered. Since there was still a lot of planning to be done, and the school year was almost over, they decided to put off the theft until at least the autumn. But even then, it was clear that Warren and Spencer couldn't pull it off by themselves. They decided to recruit people they could trust. Then Eric's name came up. One night before the school break, Warren calls up Eric and says they should get together. This was the first step towards them getting back together and mending their friendship after their fallout the previous semester. They got together and had dinner at Pazzo's Pizza Pub. They talked over a few drinks, and as one thing led to another, they decided to move on from the money issue. After getting beyond all of that, they began discussing Warren's heist plan. Warren explains the plan and all the steps already taken, from meeting the buyers to seeking out a location for appraisal. Eric instantly becomes nervous as the plan moves towards the fact that they have to literally walk out of the library with those books. This theft was going to be much bigger than anything they had ever done before. The three went back to their South Lexington subdivisions for a summer break. Warren got a job at a nearby day camp. Eric launched a lawn care company with his friend Chas Allen, and Spencer got a commission to paint murals at a local school while continuing to play football. When the guys could, they hung around, and Warren would often conjure up visions for them of life after the theft in the Mediterranean, complete with sleek yachts and topless women. Through swirling puffs of marijuana smoke, a plan is born. Viewmont Avenue is a quiet residential neighborhood close to the University of Kentucky campus. Tucked away amid other homes is a dilapidated yellow cinder block bungalow with 2 floors and 2 bedrooms. Warren Lipka moved into the unfinished basement in the autumn of 2004. The pricing was appropriate, at only $200 a month, as Warren was desperate to focus on the theft full-time after closing down his and Spencer's fake ID firm and leaving the United Kingdom for the semester. Above all, the basement was private. Warren persuaded the other two during a basement conference that they would require a 4th person, primarily to assist with moving the nearly 250 pounds of Audubon folios out of the library. Following a brief deliberation, they selected Chas Allen, a suave, well-groomed business major from the University of Kentucky who had founded the lawn care business alongside Eric the previous summer. In addition to living in the Yellow House, Chas co-owned it with his father, a well-known real estate investor in Lexington. Chas remembers that when Eric revealed the plan to him, he made fun of the three and called them crazy. However, after wallowing in the enormity of the possible financial gain and being persuaded of the heist's simplicity, the appraisal's rationality, and the veracity of Warren's Amsterdam contacts, Chas fell in love with the scheme almost instantly. Spencer made numerous appointments with Special Collections librarian Betty Jean Gooch to scout the premises and create comprehensive sketches of the interior of the library and the neighboring rare book room in between football practice, classes, painting, and studying. The others also took notes on staff operations and possible escape routes while they were in the library. They looked at the campus police officers, staking out of the library for hours at a time. They would climb onto dorm rooftops and record the arrivals and departures of teachers, students, and security guards. They also did immense research work on the internet, using keywords such as auction house appraisals, stun guns, and Swiss bank accounts. For inspiration and motivation, they watched heist movies like Ocean's 11. Warren had already created a draft plan before Halloween, which he showed to the other 3 people in the basement. Thursday, December 16, one of the last days of the school's final exams, was scheduled as the day of the robbery. The library would be almost deserted. Warren would schedule an afternoon meeting with Gooch under a false identity to examine the books they intended to pilfer. The heist was organized into 3 stages. Phase 1 starts at the bungalow when the 4, all dressed like elderly men, get into a car. Phase 1 concludes when the 4 are in their first assigned positions at the base of the library steps, and the car is parked in front of the library. The real theft occurs in Phase 2, which starts when Spencer sets up shop in a nearby athletic center window on the top floor, where he will keep an eye out. Warren uses a stun gun on Gooch, knocking her unconscious, as he and Chas ascend to the 3rd floor rare book room. Then Warren and Chas let Eric in, and they started putting the smaller volumes in backpacks and covering the Audubons in bedsheets. The 3 then used the lift reserved for personnel to descend to the ground floor and depart via the west fire exit. Phase 2 concludes once the spoils are placed inside the car. Phase 3 is the escape, in which the squad and the loot are to be transported to a temporary resting spot by Warren's plan, which entails swapping the main vehicle for a second vehicle at a secret location. They need to have the books appraised at Christie's in New York right away after the theft, because it's a given that the pilfered books will be added to databases of art theft within a week. Color-based code names were given by Warren. Mr. Green, Spencer; Mr. Yellow, Warren; Mr. Pink, Chas; and Mr. Black, Eric. The concept was well received, and shortly after Thanksgiving, they took action. In addition, Warren placed an online order for 4 stun guns. Eric, in the meantime, managed to get his hands on bedsheets, electrician's tape, a wool cap, and zip ties. Spencer put together a tiny wardrobe of gray wigs, costume glue, and false beards. He attempted but was unable to reschedule his art history final for later that day on the 16th, so that he would have time to properly apply the disguises. Warren gave Gooch another call to reschedule Walter Beckman's appointment for 3 p.m. The alias was inspired by footballer David Beckham. Almost immediately, on the morning of December 16, Warren's well-planned scheme started to fall apart. Eric was unable to obtain his friend's vehicle, and Chas was forced to borrow a Dodge Caravan that his mother was serendipitously selling the following day. Warren drove across town, returned with a black Cobra stun pen, and had Spencer zap him and Eric to test its knockout capability, because the stun guns he had ordered had never come, and never did. The replacement vehicle they were driving couldn't locate a parking spot anywhere close to the library when they got on campus. As soon as the boys entered the library, the students gazed at their absurd old man costumes. They observed some individuals hanging out in the rare book room as well. Following a brief meeting among the shelves, the conspirators decided to temporarily halt the expedition and withdrew to the bungalow. By 5 o'clock in the evening, Warren, now posing as Beckman, was back on the phone with Gooch, letting her know that he had been out of town on business and had missed his appointment. Gooch consented to reschedule for 11 o'clock the next day. The new plan called for them to remove their disguises and let Warren and Eric alone into the library. While Warren suppressed Gooch in the rear book room, Eric would remain on the ground floor. He was then to phone Eric to arrange for the books to be transported in 2 journeys to the car, which was to be driven by Chas. The boys state that for Chas to return the Dodge Caravan to his mother in time for her to sell it, and for Spencer and Eric to make it to their final sociology and tennis tests, respectively, the entire operation would need to be finished by 12:30 p.m. That evening, Warren dyed his hair blonde to further conceal his identity. Chas maneuvered the car into a nice parking spot and observed Warren and Eric enter the library. Warren attacked BJ once in the rear section with his stun pen, and Warren used zip ties to tie her up. Warren covered Gooch's eyes with a cap, and the two placed a bedsheet on the floor and started stacking the 7 Audubon folios, 3 volumes from another Audubon series, and the 4-volume Birds of America that they planned to steal. The guys had underestimated how heavy the books would be, and they could only manage 3 at a time. Gooch had picked out some smaller books for them, which they crammed into their backpacks. They headed for the staff-only lift, each grabbing one end of the Audubon. They promised BJ to make an anonymous call for people to know she was up there, tied up. When they got off the elevator, they couldn't find the fire exit. They went back up and accidentally stopped on the main floor, where a librarian spotted them, who went up to the rare books room and saw BJ tied up. The boys went back into the elevator and realized the only way out was through the main floor. They ascended the lift once more and carried the books into a stairwell in the back that led to an additional exit. Their arms failed them as they skittered down the stairs, and they had to pause to collect their breath. The librarian emerged at the top of the stairs, beyond herself with wrath at having seen Gooch hogtied in the rare book room, and Eric had propped the folios on the steps with his foot. After dropping the books, Eric ran away with Warren. Chas saw them running from afar, with the librarian only a few steps from catching up with them. He reversed the vehicle, nearly hitting the librarian. His friends ran into the vehicle, and they zoomed off. After swerving through traffic on neighboring 4th Street, Chess stopped the vehicle 1 mile later in front of a housing project where most of the residents were black. He changed his mind about the idea, and thinking that 3 men in a gray minivan would attract too much attention, he kicked Eric and Warren out onto the street. Chess planned to drop off the minivan at his mother's house and then come back to pick them up in a different vehicle. It seemed to Warren and Eric that they had barely escaped with nothing when they left the vehicle. Surprisingly, inside their backpacks were nearly $750,000 worth of books and manuscripts, and illuminated manuscript from 1425 worth $200,000, a set of the 2-volume 15th century horticultural masterpiece, Hortus Sanitatis, worth $450,000, 20 original Audubon pencil drawings worth $50,000, and Audubon's A Synopsis of the Birds of North America worth $10,000. And true to his words, Chas came by in another vehicle, just in time to save them from thugs coming after them. Back at Warren's later that afternoon, the boys were transfixed by local coverage of the Transy Book Heist. According to the news, it appeared that neither Gooch nor anyone else was able to provide the police with an accurate description of the boys. The librarian who chased them out of the library did tell police the correct total of 4 thieves, even though she had seen only 3. A witness had written down a license plate number, but it did not match theirs. They tried to come up with some link the cops could make between them and the theft, but they couldn't. They had a celebratory smoke that evening to celebrate a barely half heist. Now, it was time to go to New York. On getting to New York, Warren and Spencer agreed to go to Christie's. They both wore suits and dressed fine. The others agreed to stay in their SUV around the premises. At the lobby, they announced they were there to see Thomas Lecky, a rare book specialist, and they had an appointment under the name Walter Beckham. Mr. Lecky's assistant came out and apologized that he would not be joining them as he had other appointments. The assistant, Melanie, asked to do the appraisal instead, and the boys joyfully agreed. They showed her the books, and she made notes. They agreed she would contact them later, with Spencer leaking his contact information. Chas insisted that they should meet Thomas Lecky and wait one more night in NYC. The next day, Warren left 4 messages for Melanie, all with no replies. This nearly tore them apart, with Chas arguing and fighting with Warren. In the following week, the investigation thickened as police went through numerous footage of the campus and combed through every eyewitness they could find. Walter Beckman's email has been tracked down by a police technician to Gooch. In response to a federal subpoena, Yahoo gave law enforcement access to all of the information about Walter Beckman's email account. Melanie was questioned by the FBI, and Christie's provided them with additional information, including the phone number that was left. The owner of the number was Gary Reinhard, a resident of Lexington, Kentucky. "This is Spence" was on the voicemail. This directed police enforcement to Lipka and Reinhard's social media accounts, as they looked similar to the individuals they had seen at Christie's. On February 11, 2005, after extensive surveillance, the FBI searched the residences of the suspects. At a bungalow where the stolen books were hidden, the overwhelming evidence left no room for denial, leading to all 4 culprits' confessions. In April 2005, the students, Lipka, Reinhard, and their 2 accomplices, Eric Borsuk and Charles Allen, pleaded guilty to 6 federal charges. These included the interstate transportation of stolen property and the theft of cultural artifacts from a museum. The judge, acknowledging the severity of the crime, emphasized that they were all equally responsible. The value of the books removed from the library was considered in determining the gravity of the offense. Additionally, the use of a stun gun during the heist was deemed a significant factor, as it constituted a potentially dangerous weapon. Consequently, each of the 4 received a sentence of 7 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole, underscoring the serious nature of their actions. However, after serving their time for the Transylvania Book Heist, the former students embarked on different paths. Chas Allen, who played a crucial role in the heist, turned to writing as a form of reflection and redemption. He authored a book titled Evolution, Becoming a Criminal, where he delves into his experiences and the personal journey that led him to, and eventually away from, the world of crime. This book is an effort for Allen to confront his past and navigate his way towards a better future. As for maintaining contact with his former accomplices, Allen has chosen a path of independence, focusing on his own personal growth and distancing himself from the group dynamic that once defined that period of his life. Each of the heist participants has their own story of how they moved forward from the infamous event that once bound them together. And with that, we come to the end of our story. I hope you enjoy this journey through a remarkable chapter of real-life intrigue and transformation. Don't forget to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing for more fascinating tales. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to light. Thanks for watching.